Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the third BICSI webinar of the year via whatever method we're using today. Thank you very much for just being on the line there whilst we're just sorting out a few issues with presentations. It's good to say we're all up and running now. I'm not going to spend too long on the line. I'm just going to say that if you are a BICSI credential holder, please make sure you contact me or the BICSI office directly so that we can make sure you get CECs awarded for this. The session will be recorded, but will only be available to members on the BICSI website after this session is closed, probably a couple of days afterwards, just to make sure we've got it all up and running. As you know, today the session is by Murray Teale, so he's waiting in the wings. But as per usual for the update, I'm going to hand over to Paul Stathis. He's going to give you a bit of an update what's happening in the region. So, Paul, you can still hear me, I believe.
Hear you loud and clear, Craig.
Excellent. Right, I'm going to mute myself and take my camera off, and I'll just catch up with you guys at the end. So enjoy the presentation, and thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Craig, and thank you all for participating this afternoon. So right now, as I understand it, we've got folk as far east as Fiji joining us through New Zealand and right across Australia, and I believe we have a few from Asia as well. So we are delighted to have so many participating. This is now becoming the new norm for us. I'm delighted that we're able to run them on a fortnightly basis. We'll still have a great deal of interest, which is good. In fact, we've got a surprisingly high number of people who have attended or registered to attend this webinar today. Just a little bit of housekeeping of some of the details that we have. I'll just step through the slides. There we go. If you could direct your questions, comments, etc., to the moderator via the chat box that's sitting in your dashboard there. That way, Craig will be able to compile that, and we'll have a Q&A time after the webinar goes through. As Craig mentioned, we have a number of credential holders who are in attendance. We have captured you on our registration form, and we'll ensure that your attendance is duly noted and then passed on to a credentialing department to ensure that that important CEC is passed on. Just a quick outline of our agenda today. We have only one presentation. We ran two in our first two as a conventional seminar that we've run in the past. We found that might have been a little long, a little too much information, and perhaps we were unfortunately had to rush through some of them, so we didn't keep you on the web link too long. So we're now going to structure these as one presentation at a time, typically about an hour. And I'm delighted that we have Murray Teale, who's the chair of the CT1 and WC80 standards committees, amongst a number of other committees. Murray's very, very passionate about the state of our industry, the directions it's taking, particularly the standards and the regulations that really direct the path that we take in our industry. Most important, so I'm delighted that Murray's speaking to us today on this, and I'm sure you'll find it all very valuable information. Just a quick question, why webinars and not seminars? Essentially, coronavirus is right around the world has forced us to go into self-isolation. We've suspended a number of our seminars. We had so many scheduled for Q1, but unfortunately, we've had to suspend them. We've had to postpone our New Zealand conference. I'll talk a little bit about that down the track. But I just wanted to stress the importance that BICSI has in its responsibility to members. Like, it's all well and good to be a member of an association, but what are we doing for you? We are very much all about education, networking, and credentialing. So whilst we're in self-isolation mode, we're looking for all the different ways in which we can facilitate those three areas. Education, we see seminars as being an important component of that. We'll talk a little bit more about other forms of education that are utilizing technology. Networking, well, we're trying to encourage that as much as possible. Either through this forum or just simply letting our members who have information share it with members who need information. I get lots of phone calls and emails every day. I'm still in the office, by the way, from people looking for information or looking for assistance and guidance. I can then refer people to the appropriate people with that information. So let's utilize online as best we can. And I do want to express my sincere thanks to both Fluke Networks and R&M for facilitating our South Pacific web seminars. When this issue first came to us, I was at a bit of a loss. I really didn't know what to do. We use GoToMeeting as a platform internally within BICSI. It is reasonably effective for web conferences, teleconferencing, but not very effective as a seminar platform or a webinar platform. So Fluke and R&M have very kindly offered this to us, so we alternate each fortnight between the two. I've had a few teething problems as we've come to learn a little bit more about it, but I'm sure we'll learn a great deal about how it all works progressively. And I do sincerely express my appreciation to them for not only making it available, but also their assistance. So as an example, Craig is on at the moment facilitating this and recording it for us too, so we can make it accessible to others. Our plans moving forward, we're hosting fortnightly webinars. We'll talk about that schedule shortly. We're recording them and making them available for members to download, which is an important component. I should have mentioned earlier, I wanted to express a welcome to our BRCA registered cablers, who many of whom have joined us for the first time today. We hope that you do find it informative. These are areas that affect you enormously. So if you're in lockdown mode or self-isolation, whatever the case is, this is a chance for you to learn on what's happening from a standards and a regulatory perspective, as well as fire some questions at the subject matter experts. And then beyond that, what we're doing is notifying members. You will have seen in the latest BICSI Bytes newsletter and the BRCA Bytes newsletter, we're linking members and cablers to the various online education forums that we have. And we'll keep, for those of you who do run courses, who work for companies that do, let me know, and I'm happy to share that with our members and registered cablers. And the last point there, sadly, we've had to defer our New Zealand conference. It was actually scheduled for the 5th of May. We currently have that pushed back into late September, and we've just got to wait and see on that one. So we don't have any concrete information about that just yet. As you can see, our web seminar program, that's the couple that we've had already, and then we've got them scheduled for the next, every 2 weeks for the next couple of months through May and all the way into June. Essentially, we have presenters who were scheduled to speak at our seminars for Q1. The physical seminars, we've had to postpone them, so we've got them scheduled. You will see them listed on the BICSI website, bicsi.com.au. If you go to upcoming events, you are able to register there. There will be some little modifications to them as we liaise with various speakers about when it's convenient for them to speak, and etc. So there'll be some changes. You are able to register there, which is an important component of making sure you get the information about it. Okay, let me just talk briefly about training. As we mentioned earlier, this is a key component of BICSI's reason for existing. Not only to provide the training, as we've mentioned there, we've got free and discounted BICSI Connect courses online, but also to direct members and registered cablers to other sources of training. So as we mentioned there, a number of BICSI corporate members are running free online courses. AVICSA is an AV association. We're not specifically connected to them, but we do have a reciprocation of information. They are also putting a lot of their training courses, the AV training courses, for free until the middle of June. And there are a number of other organizations. This seems to be the norm now of offering online short courses for free. I've seen various courses on project management, business, HR, law, etc. You're probably seeing a lot yourself. I hope you're not disappointed if I'm putting them up. I will be letting people know just stuff that I see that might be of interest for yourselves to participate in. You can or can't join them. It's your call on that. Just simply as we find information, we'll share that with everyone. Just an update on our conference. It has been tentatively deferred to the 29th of September. No guarantees on that at the moment because we're just waiting on specific instructions as to whether the country will be open or not. Still at the same venue at Ellerslie Event Centre in Auckland. It currently is a one-day event, but we may look at expanding that into a two-day event simply because we've made the decision to defer the Australian conference into 2021, which will be in Sydney. So to have a large-scale conference in 2020 in the South Pacific, we may end up doing that in New Zealand. A lot depends on whether we can travel or can't travel in and out of New Zealand, etc. So just stay tuned with that one. Just an interesting component, we're including a technology experience zone our platinum sponsor CommScope has teamed up with a number of other exhibitors to explore ways of which making the Internet of Things more tactile. So we're looking at having AV systems, PA systems, lighting systems, security systems, all different sorts of technologies connected via cabling so people can actually experience it. So that's something we're looking at developing, so stay tuned for that. And also many of our other events overseas have been cancelled and deferred, which includes Europe, Middle East, UK, Singapore, India, Colombia. So quite a few BICSI events globally have been either deferred or cancelled simply because of coronavirus. If you are interested in attending any of those, either contact us or go to bicsi.org and you'll find information on that. Okay, just a quick one on what's important now. Communications. Remember, we facilitate an essential service. Our industry is telecommunications. It's very important that we are conscious of the value that we provide to industry. And I know a lot of conversations I've had with folk over the last few weeks is that many cablers and designers can't be busier simply because people are suddenly realizing that their infrastructure is pretty poor as they try to communicate from home or set up various virtual networks. Our physical health is most important. That's the reason we're self-isolating. You're hearing it 1,000 times from everyone. We're just wanting to add to that by basically saying, follow the self-isolation criteria. Our mental health is important, not only our own, but also for those that we work with, whether it's our workmates, our neighbours, local businesses, family, relatives, etc., as we mentioned there. Show some compassion for our community. We're all being told that if you can support local people, and we want to include or encourage others to support local cablers, local designers, local suppliers again, because this is what keeps us going for the time being. I will also echo the applause that's going out for the healthcare workers. They are doing a spectacular job. Sadly, we've lost a few of them who have actually contracted coronavirus and have died, which is an absolute tragedy. But they keep working, and we really want to acknowledge them. So whatever you can, just if you know them, say thanks to them and just tell them that they are really superstars. And also wanted to encourage you to applaud our fellow ICT workers. We're in the same boat. We're not putting ourselves in danger like the healthcare workers, but where they're helping people and businesses to stay connected and keep working. And the whole idea is it's a new paradigm that we have of needing telecommunications infrastructure so we can work as close to business as usual, as close as possible at least. So by all means, give yourself a pat on the back and make sure that your clients and your customers and your peers know that we are providing an essential service. All right, just the last one, what to do if you're self-isolating. Go online to bicsi.org. BICSI members can access the BICSI 2020 Winter Conference. That was in Feb. Great conference, some great presentations, well worth getting access to. You can enroll in some of the online courses. There's a couple of examples. BICSI courses, a couple of, I found, CommScope had a great one on wireless RF. BICSI had a great one on project management for AV. You can download these recorded BICSI webinars. Once we get it sorted out, we'll send out a note to everyone, letting everyone know how it's done. And just as a last statement, we all hear about coronavirus, it's all negative, etc. Share something positive. There's a lot of funnies getting around on TV we're seeing, on social media. Say something positive. And if I can encourage you, say something positive about what we're doing. If you know of any of your colleagues, or if you've done some great things helping people, say it. Great, you know, we'll all be pretty excited by it. So with that, I'll close. I'll hand over now back to Craig, who's then going to hand over to Murray Teale as he steps us through what's happening with our standards.
Awesome, thank you very much there, Paul. Just give it a second here. So Murray, if you can hear me, just unmute the microphone. Here we go. He knows what he's doing. So you need to share a different screen on that one.
So which screen do you want me on?
The main presentation, so I can see your slide sorter page at the moment.
Okay, I'm not sure how to change it around, Craig, so just give me a second and I'll see if I can do something to help us.
Click on slideshow down the bottom left hand side, bottom right hand side.
I'll just see if this does it. Does that do it? No.
No, that's still your slide sort.
Multiple screens.
Just a second. Let me try. No, it's not going to. I don't know how to do this, Craig. What was your suggestion, Paul?
You've got multiple screens on your laptop, on your PC. If
Yes.
you just go to a single screen, just disconnect the extra screen. And then go to slideshow, and it should show just the slides.
Just a second, I'm just going to find the off button. I don't turn these things off. Just that. Okay, and then we go slideshow. Sorry, guys. Resume slideshow.
Or just down in the bottom right-hand corner. The little slideshow icon, just a bit over to the left. Yep.
That one?
Yep.
I think it's still displaying on one of your other screens. Is it still physically plugged in or turned off?
They've just turned off. Let me just.
Yeah, just
show me.
disconnect it, probably best.
I'll just start up again and see if that works. That's still showing the screen. This is
Anyway,
just a second. I'll disconnect the other screens. Nice pull.
if not, we'll just keep going as it is and get
Yep,
previews
this
of what you're talking about. There we go. Excellent.
All right. Oh, there we go. Over to you, Murray. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a second. Okay. So welcome, guys. Sorry for the poor start. We have a number of changes here, and I noticed we've got some people from international with us. Some of this stuff is really only relevant to Australia with our regulation. So you've just got to watch out for that during the presentation. So what we're going to talk about today is just the changes brought around by the introduction of power and different power over telecommunications cabling. So we have an issue now where we've gone through something quite different. We've gone through a situation where the amount of power we're putting down the telecommunications cabling has become substantial. In fact, we've got now hazardous voltages running over telecommunications cabling, and that's not overly new. But just its uses are becoming a little bit broader in its application. So there's a number of ramifications that come out of this, and they basically mean that we're going to have had to review what the standards have addressed. And I've just got to work out the clever play now to move off the slide. No, I don't want to do that. Now I have a small problem here, Craig, that I'm not able to move the slides.
You can't use the left and right buttons.
Left and right button aren't working. In fact, let me
Just check where your cursor is, Murray.
Yep.
So when you're on slideshow, make sure the cursor's on the slide itself.
Yeah, it's giving me the whole screen. So just a second, I can use my mouse. Now everything's working. Okay. So what's driven the changes? A standard called 62368.1. Now this is an ISO IEC standard or an IEC standard that's been introduced. It replaced a standard called 60950. And we've had, for as long as I can remember, energy sources like SELV, ELV, TNV, ELV, and LV telecommunications. And about 18 months ago, this was all changed. So the base standard for safety equipment, electrical safety and telecommunications equipment, changed to 62368.1. Now that way of they address that is by addressing energy sources, ES1, ES2, and ES3. Now, ES1, ES2, and ES3 are 3 classifications for energy sources. And they're a little bit different. We used to have current or voltage limiting on our systems to basically say this is safe. So what we've done is now is introduced 3 different classifications. ES1, which is safe to touch, which basically means anybody can use it, touch it, it's not going to do you any harm. ES2, which is a little bit dangerous, but we put some safeguards in place and it's relatively safe. And ES3, by its nature, is hazardous. There is no current or voltage limited on an ES3 circuit. I'll say that again, there is no voltage or current limit on the ES3 circuit. So in S009 in Australia, we had to look at how we're going to address that. Now, ES3 is deemed to be hazardous. So we need to find out ways to address this. Now, there's different sorts of people that we've got to protect. The end user, common people, ordinary people, need to be protected. Skilled people and trained people all need to be protected. So what's going to happen with our standards is SELV, ELV, TNV, ELV, and LV2 communications are not going to be referenced anymore in S008 and S009. It's going to be replaced by ES1, ES2, and ES3. When I'm saying they're not going to be referenced anymore, they're going to be relevant for the next 18 months. And we've done some work within the standards to actually say what was equivalent to what. We've got more power devices. So not only have we got this change, but we're now starting to see more things happen with power. So one of the things we've got happening is we're going to get things like digital power. So this is 2,000 watts, 2,000 meters. So it's 2,000 watts, 2,000 meters, and it's safe to touch. Now this is this is typically done over a single pair cable. It might be require 4 single pair cables to get there, but obviously they're a bigger gauge or bigger conductors. Is a better way of saying that. We've also increased the amount of power we can put down 4 pair. So we've now got PoE, and it goes up between 500 and 750 milliamps over 4 pairs. And then we've got 1 pair cable coming. Now this is a new standard called 802.3CG. This is the international standard for Ethernet, and they've developed 1 pair cabling systems. So 1 pair cabling systems will go 1 kilometre and will deliver power and communications to a kilometre. And there's some interesting numbers. Obviously the shorter hauls, long haul, and up to a kilometre, but 300 meters is another one where we can start effectively still use 4 pair cabling or the gauge of 4 pair cabling out to 300 meters on 1 pair systems. We've also got more dependencies on autonomous vehicles. The time propagation delay, the time taken to get there is going to impact. So we've got autonomous cars and trucks. In Western Australia, we've got trucks being driven around the mining sites, and they're basically being driven around in Perth. We've got stock control, robots in factories. We've got food and pharmaceutical delivery in hospitals. So we've got a whole lot of technology that is going to be somewhat dependent on having really low latency or really knowing what the latency is. We're going to have IoT and basically communication sensors and actors all going to be there. And what we're going to see is that takes over as a major driver for telecommunications cable. So we're going to have more devices connected, more devices that are effective in basically communicating with the outside world, and we're going to have access to those devices from anywhere in the world. We're going to have more external connected devices. So cameras and WAPs we've had for some time, but sensors and actuators are going to go outside. So we're going to see a lot more stuff in smart cities, smart suburbs, smart campuses, where we're going to have more sensors and actuators on site. Now, this is something new for us because typically what we like to do is deliver that in copper. Now, one of the reasons we like to deliver that in copper because it delivers us power and communications over the same cable. Obviously, fibre is a really good option and wireless is a really good option. However, both those technologies need to address power in some way. If you put something like LoRa in and you've got a whole lot of devices that have got batteries in it, then in 5 or 10 years, you're going to have to find all those devices again and replace the batteries. If you've got fibre, really good, fibre is really good for the long haul, big data. But again, you're going to have to find method to get power there. And it's not really ideal for cheap sensors to be found around the edges. So we've also got a change in dependencies. So we've got higher dependencies for safety, security, and reliability. Our systems, now that we put in place, have an impact on safety and security systems. And basically, reliability means that each organisation has a function, but if you don't have service availability to operate, that function goes down. If you're running a McDonald's, you need to have function in that store. If you're running a hospital, you need to have function in that store. If you're running any sort of business, main roads department would need to have function to say form a queue nicely when we're over this virus. We're now looking also at ES3 hazards. Now, ES3 hazards are telecommunications. They've been around for a long while. RFT-C and RFT-V circuits typically have been able to deliver hazardous services, and we've had LV telecommunications cable, things like PA speakers and EWIS cabling that has started has always been there and around. And in Australia, it's deemed to be telecommunications cabling, so it's called up under our regulation. But ES3 is going to be interesting because we're going to see more and more power delivered. As I said before, we've now got things like 2,000 watts available to us over a single pair comms cable. Now, obviously, with the increase of power down a comms cable, we're now going to get heat riser cable. Now, heat riser cable needs to be addressed. So we used to be very good at putting cables in, say that goes 90 meters, and we're good with that. But if we start putting power down the cable, even at the highest level PoE, we start bundling that cable and installing it, we're going to get heat rise. So we really need to look at addressing the heat rise. Now, there is a fit for purpose, or if you're manually correct, fitness for purpose obligation. Now, this is an obligation on cablers. Now, cablers in Australia have to make sure that what they're installing is fit for purpose. Now, in New Zealand, you probably pick up some of that yourself because in New Zealand, there is no regulation. So in Australia, we're covered by the Telecommunications Act of '97. It's a national regulation. It's enforced by the ACMA. New Zealanders don't have that. So they're really dependent on engineers and consultants and end users to actually make sure that the cablers are putting something in that's fit for purpose. We have a general duty of care. Now, duty of care means that what you do is going to be sensible, that you're not going to actually connect things that are going to cause you problems. Now, what we're concerned about here is if we put enough heat into a cable, what we're going to do is we're going to get the cable over its operational temperature, which is going to destroy the cable, which means when it cools down, it's not going to operate. Now, if your safety and security systems and your operational systems are dependent on that cable, you've got a problem. Now, there is some issues about fire, but the real issue is once we hit 60 degrees, in some cases 70 degrees, the cable becomes non-operational. And when it cools down, it cools down, it's basically still non-operational. We need greater autonomy. We got great need for and reliance on data. We've got better data analytics around to produce better outcomes, and we're integrating everything. We're integrating everything in digital hospitals, as an example. We're just integrating everything into one system, and that one system intensively is IoT. So what are the changes? What can we say are the changes? We have a group of new standards. We've got new standards that are coming that both regulatory and performance standards. We've got a high dependency on supporting infrastructure. We've got IoT. So IoT is coming and we need to be able to support that. We've got integration, so the convergence between power and communications and how we derive things. We've got power delivered over telecommunications, which is interesting because it's a gap in the regulation at the moment. We can deliver hazardous powers in Australia without actually being an electrician. So we need to understand that and understand that on some of the comms cabling, we could still see some hazardous service going down there. And there's a general lack of understanding about the risk. In the good old days, we used to really worry about the risk being that you couldn't make an emergency telephone call. And that risk is somewhat dissipated. Everybody's got a mobile phone. You want to make an emergency telephone call, it's not that hard. However, if we get an understanding now that if you get your cameras going down in a freezer to support life, because if the forklift topples over, somebody gets trapped, the camera's going to save them. A camera in a parking lot and nursing for nurses can be part of their safety system. Panic buttons on railway stations all form part of risk mitigation strategies employed by different organisations. And there's a lack of understanding about what's coming. So we in standards tend to lag behind what everybody else is doing. But in this case, we are starting to put in stuff that is to cover what's coming, and people aren't really in the position to yet understand what's coming. So let's see if we can address some of that at the moment. Customer cabling. There's basically three things that we've got to consider about our cabling. It's going to provide power, and it's going to provide communications, and it's going to provide some sort of functional purpose. It's going to be something that we've got that says we need to have power, communications, and its function down a cabling system. Now, the ideal candidate for that is copper. It provides all those three facets, and it can do it cheaply. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with three new energy sources: ES1, ES2, and ES3. ES1 is safe to touch. ES2 is safe with some basic safeguards. So for an ordinary person, you put some basic safeguards in place and you're covered. A basic safeguard would be something like an RJ45 outlet. Now, an RJ45 outlet, if you're an adult, you can't get your fingers in to make the contact with the connector. There's something called and it's a great term, it's a finger test. And it's a standard finger test, or an ordinary finger test. You put your finger into an RJ45 and you can't get your fingers to touch the contact. However, if you're a small child, then you can get your fingers in to make contact. That's why there is some requirements in S009 when you're working in preschool and early childhood learning, that we're going to actually say, put these outlets out of reach. And then we deal with ES3 hazardous cabling. So that is going to be something that's going to kill somebody. And to protect an ordinary person, we need to put in some basic and some supplementary safeguards to make sure that ordinary people don't actually get to touch this. We've also got some issues with instructed people. These are people who've been trained. If you're dealing with a hazardous service, how much instruction do you need before you actually can get to work on that cabling? And then we need some skilled people, the people that are trained and understand what they're actually dealing with. So ordinary people need to be protected, instructed people, and skilled people. So basically, ordinary people are just your everyday person, no skills in electronics or electrical. Now, you can be an ordinary person and be a doctor. It's not a matter of what skill sets you have outside of electrical or communications. It is what skill sets you have. It is what skill sets you've got in electrical and communications. It's not what skill sets you have outside. Sorry about that. So we talk about ordinary people, just somebody who not expected to understand anything. Instructed people have been trained. So they go off and get some training, either from a skilled person or some form of formal recognition, and they get to do a certain set of skills that they're instructed to do, and only those skills. And then we get skilled people who generally have all the knowledge and are able to make decisions about what to do in this particular case when they're dealing with something. We need to address all those three people. Now, there are some gaps at the moment. We are writing cabling standards, so if you put cabling in, you're not activating it. But to work on it live, then you may need to have some skills, which makes you a skilled person. So let's have a look at what we're dealing with here. So we've got higher power over 4-pair cable. So what we've got now is we've got heat rise within a cable becoming an issue. The telecommunications cabling is specified to work at 60 degrees C. So 60 degrees C is going to be what we can get up to. Now in Australia, if you're at 50 degrees, that means you've only got 10 degrees heat rise in the cable that we can expect from the cable. So there's a number of different things that can affect how that cable is going to have heat rise. Bundle size, current. So bundle size, how many cables you have in a bundle, because that's going to make a difference to airflow, and it's also going to mean heat sources are local. Current, how much current you're putting down there. The number of active cables, the conductor size, obviously the bigger the conductor, the better it is for taking current. And all of the cables will be affected by heat rise. And as I said before, the ambient temperature is going to be one of the major considerations about where you're going to find that this becomes a problem. Now we just look at the different types of PoE that we have. So type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4. Type 1 is pretty well easy. It's not caused us a problem before. We basically have put this in and we've not had any problems. Type 2, type 3, and type 4, we're really going to have to start to think about how we're going to do this. Now, I've given you some currents there, and they're current per pair. So you'd have that for current per conductor. And if you notice that we're nearly at 500 milliamps per conductor, sorry, per pair. I'll start again. We're at nearly 500 milliamps per conductor. That's nearly 1,000 milliamps per pair. So if we're looking at this, we've got Cat3 cable, Cat5 cable as a minimum. So the old stuff we'll run over Cat3. It's just not defined in the standard anymore. So what we're really dealing with is Cat5 cabling as a minimum for all these types. So I'll say that again, Cat5 really is the starting point for all these types of PoE. There is no minimum cable except for Cat5. So obviously as you get higher, we're going to see bigger and better conductors in some of the cables. So I know a lot of people, a lot of manufacturers have already moved to 23 AWG to get better conductor sizes in their cable to better handle heat rise. Now we get Poodle. Poodle is coming. And basically what Poodle is, this is power over one pair cable. It's targeted at IoT and it's targeted at building automation. And they've got a number of classes, 10, 11, 12, and 13, 14. We have power at the device. We have lengths. Now, if we look at the gauge here, 24 AWG or 24 AWG is a class 12, and we can go 300 meters on that. 300 meters on that. Of the other classifications, we have to change our cable size. We have to change our AWG, and that has an impact on how much power we can deliver over that 1,000 meters. But we have got 300 meters we can play with. We have got a classification that will give us a 300 meters and give us some needed current at the right places. And this is really aimed at IoT delivery. So 1,000 meters, we need some big cable. So that's really starting to push the friendship if it's going to be that useful to get anything done. However, you can basically see that this 300 meters is going to be something of interest. You can't probably see my thing. The 300 meters on class 12 is going to be of interest. Digital power may be used, something new for you, most of you guys. This is the ability to send lots of power down a cable. Now this is, I've sourced this slide from Prismium. So what this lets us do is put power down a comms cable and still remain safe to touch. So this is rated at ES2, so it's safe to touch, and it's basically delivering power. Now, this solution's out, and they've been out for quite a few years. And in fact, since the slide's been done, that 1,000 watts has gone up to 2,000 watts. However, this technology is now starting to be looked at as a alternative for incorporation into active devices. So we could see this sort of technology being deployed on a port of a switch. Now, how this works is it sends out a burst of power, and then it looks at sends out some data and looks at how the power is basically decaying. And if it's safe to send another package, it will. So basically, if you touch it, it's going to say, oops, we've got a decay, we can't send anything more, so let's shut the service down. So this is basically something that is new-ish for Australia. It's been promoted in Australia by Prismium, and basically it shapes a hazardous service, takes it and makes it non-hazardous, transfers it 1,000 meters or 2,000 meters, puts it back into the receiver, makes it hazardous at the other end again. This is a bit of a game changer. Obviously, there's some expense associated with this, but this is of some interest. And I noticed Curtin University is trialing this in one of their projects at the moment. Distributed building services. This is new. ISO IEC 11801 came out, and that basically is the general requirements, but ISO IEC 11801-6, which we adopted in Australia as AS 1101-6, supports building services. So this is a space. Now, what the standards have done is looked at different spaces. You can have an office space, you can have an industrial space, you can have a building services space. And the building services space, the way I put that simply is, it's in the ceiling. This is where you put stuff in the ceiling or outside. This is a service that will go there. So the most common areas that we see and have seen for some time is cameras, wireless access points, and distributed antenna systems. This is basically old school, but we've now got some energy management happening as well. So lighting, power distribution, incoming utility metering, environmentally controlled temperature and humidity, access control, PIRs, time and attendance, signs, AV projectors, that sort of stuff, paging, monitors, nurse calls, infant security, IoT, and they're basically all being addressed to see what we can do with IoT. So this is basically intelligent business systems that will drive IoT. Now, there's a couple of things happening here. We, in the standards, have come up with a concept called a modular plug terminated link. Now, AS/NZS 11801-1 has this. This is basically when you put a connector on the end of the cable, so it goes straight into the device. Now, one pair cabling system, we've decided on what the plug for that looks like, and the IEEE committees have agreed on what their interface is going to be like. So we've got this agreed. So IEEE 802.3 has been agreed, and we now got people deploying one pair systems. And on 4 pair and 1 pair, we're going to have these links that are modular plug terminated links. The other thing that came into play is that we started putting better technology into the ceiling space, 2.5 and 5G. So 2.5 and 5G supports WAPs. And there's a common platform now to get 2.5 and 5G WAPs, which means that Cat6 cable can't support this. Cat6 cable is only good to support 1 gig. So if we want to put something in the ceiling space, then you need to have something that's better, which is 6A. Now, I know my wireless system that I've got in my office, and it's a home office, is 2.5 and 5 gig. I've got those options. So it's not a new technology. It's not something that is typically bleeding edge. But what it does mean is that we're going to see a change for what we've done in the past from putting Cat6 in the ceiling space to needing to have 6A. Excuse me. So what have we done? What have we done to change the standards to address these changes? First thing, in Australia, what we've done is we've introduced or we're about to introduce 2020. Sorry, SWI, SWI9. So in 2020, we will reduce SWI and SWI9. And it's just a matter of this ES1, and ES2, and ES3 is just continuing its course. There's a little bit of internal conflict about how to actually address it safely. Because ES3 supports hazardous service, but we don't get to determine what's connected. So we've just got to actually look at the way that we're doing it. We've got different requirements. So there is a requirement for generic cabling, there's a requirement for structured cabling, and there's a requirement for application-specific requirement coming. By this, if you put in generic cabling and you want to run ES3, we've got to allow that, but how do you do that? And you've got structured cabling, which is something like a voice tie cable system. That would be structured, not generic. How do we actually do that? And application-specific cable, something like an EWIS system or PA system. Because of the dangers now introduced, because of what we've got, not only electrical dangers, but because we've got to actually consider the impact on safety and security systems from the services of those safety and security systems not being able to get service, we've strengthened the fit for purpose requirement. So the installer now has an obligation to make sure that his cabling is fit for purpose. So if it's an outlet, RJ45, it's a very strong case that you would have to be at least Cat 5 for that. And if you're putting something in the ceiling, there's a very strong case that would have to be 6A. So it's not written that way in the standard, but that's certainly a way that you can mitigate your risk. We've moved away from saying we can put any cable anywhere. For generic cabling, we're going to go and structured cabling, we're going to go to a certain size, basically 24 AWG for backbone and generic cabling. Now, this doesn't directly address heat rise, but it goes a long way. So again, this is a minimum cable size of 24 AWG. It's expressed as ohms per meter. And this is partly to address the fact that we really are going to see more power going down comms cable. We do allow for more engineered solutions. And that's great to allow more engineered solutions. However, to offer an engineered solution, the first requirement is you're an engineer, an appropriate engineer. We don't want structural engineers doing electrical design, and we don't want electrical engineers doing structural things for pits. We've replaced all the terminology that was, and replaced SELV, ELV, TMV, LV, telecommunications with ES1, ES2, and ES3. And we've really tied down the engineers to be the right type of engineers. We put some new laser class labeling in there. Now, again, it's an obligation of everybody to label any patch panel, any group of outlets, any rack with a laser safety. This is on the cabler, not on the manufacturer. This is a cabler obligation to warn people of the hazards of dangers. Now, we're putting a 6 mil earth required for all distributors that terminate external carrier cabling, customer cabling. So what this means, if you've got something going outside that's not carrier cable, it goes into a cabinet, you need to have a 6 mil earth there. And we really got to consider the fit for purpose. It's really going to be, and I've said it twice, because it's going to be one of the things that catch people out. Contractors are subject matter experts. They have an endorsement from the government in form of registration that says they are understanding what they're doing. So when SW09 comes out and SW8 comes out, there's going to be a need for you to understand exactly what you're doing in that space. So generic cabling, this is one that's going to change. ES3 generic cabling, basically ES3 are hazardous. You need to put a label on them to warn them at the interface. Labels are the greatest thing known to man to help mitigate risk. What do you do to protect the ordinary person? I stuck a label in saying don't stick your finger in there. If somebody goes sticks their finger in there, you could argue with them that that's partly their fault. With no label in there, people can basically do that and hold you responsible. There is going to be a requirement from separation and power. So an ES3 generic cabling is a hazardous service. So we've got to separate it from other communications cable. And power cable, 240 volt cable, and ES3, we've got to protect the electricians from our dangerous power and us from them. It'd be awfully embarrassing if your electrician got electrocuted by a comms cable. So we need to actually get to a position where we separate all the cables from each other. Now, we're going to make the cable for generic ES3 circuits Homebush gold with Homebush red writing. So they're the colours that have been decided. It's defined by an Australian standard, Homebush gold and Homebush red, and it needs to be labelled every 3 metres in colour. This is coming out of S008. Now, if you're wondering why it's called Homebush gold and Homebush red, would it surprise you to know that Standards Australia was once based in Homebush, a suburb of Sydney? Now, the interesting news out of this is I don't believe anybody in the marketplace has a ES3 cable sheathed correctly at the moment. I don't think you can commercially buy this, and I don't think there's a great need to pick this up. So that's typically a good thing. If you really want to do this, then it's going to be quite difficult to do, and it's going to be, because of lack of numbers, it's going to be quite expensive to do. We can't stop it under our heads of power, but it's not something to be encouraged to have ES3 generic cabling available. There is another ES3 which is application specific, and basically that's, as long as you follow the manufacturing guidelines, you can do anything. So an EWIS system or a PA system, the manufacturer will tell you which cable to use, and it's their duty of care to make sure that's met. And that's the next slide, apparently. So it's basically, you can't use generic cabling. You've got to use the manufacturer's cable that they specified, and you still got to separate it from all the other services. You've got to separate it from power cable, and you've got to separate it from comms cable. I'm just going to talk to the engineers for a small amount of time. Engineered solutions. You need to be an appropriately qualified engineers. Now, engineers solutions carry great risk, and it's because you're an engineer you can do this. It really opens you up if you do. You have a duty of care. If you do a design that's outside the standard, then it comes on you to actually do something. Now, in standards, we often get to a stage where we get a whole lot of engineers in a room and we can't agree. We can't get them to agree on a solution. So we come up with something that is the safest solution, and then say anything outside of that really needs to be somebody who sits down and does it. I've had 2 doctors sitting into a meeting, and they just disagreed with each other about what was safe and what's not, because they understood all the ramification. And then we take that, we can't make a decision, so we end up finding a compromise, put it out to the marketplace, and then we say, engineers, you can do what these 2 doctors couldn't. So there is a great deal of protection that is offered by sticking to the standards. Because if you don't stick to the standard, then all the implications of the changes, all the things that may need would be affected by changing the standard, would need to make sure all factors are met. For example, if you've got a change in conductor size of a cable, somebody says, look, I think 0.65 is not good enough. I want to go to a 0.4 millimeter underground cable, and that's a choice. For that to be right in your design, you would have to consider what the maximum length of that link is, what the link is, what the heat rise is, what's the current cabling, oh bloody hell, current carrying capability of that, what applications are going to be supported, how do you document and identify that this is a non-standard installed base, and how do you implement changes to that, and what's the impact of the safety and security and reliability. So the risk assessment becomes on you. And there's probably a whole lot of other stuff. So if you put a 0.4 in there with the expectation that you're going to be running one application, what does it mean that somebody else doesn't come up and use that cabling to run another application with more current down it? Now, if that cable heats up too much, all of a sudden you may take down a whole sectors that may be supporting some safety or security, or gas detection on a mine site, or whatever you've got. You start having considerations about what you're doing. Fitness for purpose. S008 and S009 have a fitness for purpose obligation. I'll just put my teeth back in and start again. So basically, you've got to actually make sure that the cabling meets certain obligations. Now, cablers are deemed to be subject matter experts. You go off and get your registration. You are a subject matter expert in the world. You can basically tell people that I'm an expert in cabling because I have an endorsement. I have a registration. And to do that, the expectation in putting outlets is that minimum be a category 5, class D installation that will support at least gigabit. The installer will carry some responsibility if the cabling system fails that cause death or injury. I'll say that again, an installer would carry some of the responsibility if the cabling system failed, causing death and injury. And this is not only electrical safety, but this is, you don't have service availability on a safety or security system. You don't have something that is going to protect people. It doesn't work because your cabling is faulty. You are going to spend a little bit of time explaining yourself. Now, while the regulators, not particularly ACMA, is very rarely seen on site, let me tell you, if there's a death, that's one of the times that they will come out. Death or injury will be one of the times ACMA will bring their rule book out, and then you've got to justify why something was done when the regulations clearly said that you need to do this and you did something else. So risk mitigation strategies for everybody. Typically, this is a standard on risk that we've quoted this from. You can accept risk. Accepting risk is I'm going to do it anyway, and if somebody dies, I'm going to accept it. Risk avoidance for an engineer, I'm just going to stick to the standard because that's basically going to mean that I can say that that's what the standard told me to do. Limitation, we want to limit our risk, so we can do that in a number of different ways. We can get somebody else to take on the risk. So we can get, as an end user, we can get a consultant involved, and we can transfer the risk. So if I'm a consultant and I want to transfer the risk off to the cabler, I might say to him, test everything. So test everything. So when it doesn't work, I've got at least something there to say, I asked somebody else to do it, and they did it either poorly or not, but we've got some evidence that we have transferred the risk to somebody else. So what are we changing? Retired 3080. That was the Australian New Zealand standard for 3080. Now, the Australian New Zealand standards picked up the first part of this replacement, 1181-1, and that was because my company picked up the expense for the first part of that, which is the ASNZS 1181-1, and that's because basically I wanted the New Zealanders to have a modular plug terminator link within the standards. Australia picked up all the other parts, AS 1181-1 through to 2 to 6, while New Zealand didn't pick them up, so their standard would be ISO IEC 1181-1 to 2 to 6. Now that series of standards replaced 3080, so 3080 is no longer the relevant standard. We added modular plug terminated links to 1181. This is basically putting a plug on the end of the cable and either connecting it to a CP, SCP, or directly to a patch panel. We developed a new standard called AS 1181-6. We picked that up, but that's a distributed building services. We specified a minimum class for different spaces. So depending on what sort of spaces you're in, ceiling space 1181-6, office space 1181.2, industrial 1181-3. We introduced category 8.1, category 8.2, class 1, class 2, Roman numerals. Introduced OM5, a multi-mode cable that does basically coarse wave division multiplexing over it, and we grandfathered OM1 and OM3. So that means OM2, OM1 and OM2. That basically means that 62.5 micron has been grandfathered out, which just basically translates mean that you just install it where there's some existing stuff on site. So that was our old design principle. We had a CD going up to BD, going up to FD, going up to the consolidation point, and from a TE or TO. From the forward distributor to the outlet was a magic 90 meters, and we had a consolidation point in there, and life was good. 1181-1 now talks about it like this. We've now got 5 4 different models to run for, and the option 2, 1101-2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 chooses either the number of distributors they want. So as an example, a home would have 1 distributor, while a industrial will have 4. And we go through each of those and we say, this is it. From the distributor to the TO is 90 meters, unless you're Cat 8, which goes down to 30 meters. So this is what the standards talk about. So the 11.801 series .1 general requirements. So this is not designed for any particular building type, other than this sets out all the requirements. What a Cat 6 cable is, what a Cat 5 cable is, what a link is, what a channel is, what an end-to-end link, what's a modular plug terminating link, all go into that part. And they're all, that document is referenced by all the other documents. If you're building an office space, then they'll become Class E as a minimum, Category 6, and we have the traditional things. Now, its coverage is from the CD to the TO, 2,000 meters. Industrial, minimum of Cat 5, CD to TO, maximum distance 10,000 meters. Homes, 100 meters. Data centers, 2,000 meters. Distributed building services, 10,000 meters. Now that seems a lot for distributed building services, but if you think about mining areas or industrial areas, that's going to be of interest to us. And we look down the cables, Cat 6 for offices, and we look at distributed building services, the stuff in the ceiling, minimum of 6A. I'll say that again, minimum 6A. If you're doing, and that would include WAPs and wireless points, if you are doing WAPs or wireless points, according to the standard, and Cat 6, you're not meeting the requirement. These are invoked by commercial arrangement. If somebody says to you, you must meet 11.801-6, in their spec, the minimum cable you need to put in is 6A. Now, this is the new categories, new applications. We started off with 1 gig, we went to 10 gig. So we went from Cat 5 cable supporting 1 gig. We then went up to 10 gig over Class EA, and that was good. And then we decided that we really needed to have 2.5 gig and 5 gig to support wireless access points. Now, 2.5 gig and 5 gig require 6A cabling to work. And I'll say that again, 2.5 gig and 5 gig require 6A to work. Now, there's a lot of marketing information going around, and I'll preface that with marketing information that says 2.5 and 5 gig will run over Cat 5 and Cat 6. That's true. There is absolutely no misinformation on that, other than they didn't tell you it won't run 100 meters. The only way you guarantee to make 2.5 gig and 5 gig work is to put in 6A cable. Now, there's a good chance if you've got a short runner cable, 2.5 gig will run and 5 gig will run. However, it's not guaranteed. So the only way you're going to guarantee that cable is to run is to both put 6A in. We came up with a cable to support 40 gig. So 40 gig, 30 meters, Cat 8.1. Obviously, Cat 8.2 will work, Class 1, Class 2 will work there. And life was good. However, it was expensive. And to get 100 gig working, we need to put in not 3, but 4, sorry, we need to put 3 of these in. 3 of these in to get 100 gig out of this device. And it was quite hard to do technically. So what they did is they dropped it down, the speed down, to make the devices cheaper, and dropped it down to 25 gig. So 25 gig, you can aggregate that up, 4 lots of 25 equals 100. And we're going to see this is for basically direct attach to storage stuff. Is basically, if you want something that's going to store lots of data, put lots of data in short hauls, this is the cable for you. There's some good support standards. 14763-2. That's going to address remote powering. That's a good one to get. Now that's just about to come up for review in Australia. In fact, it's in Australia, New Zealand. It's waiting to be published, and that's got all the RP stuff that I'm going to be talking about later on. 3084 is pathways and spaces. 30129 is the earth requirement for cabling. It's a mandatory. It's a performance requirement. It's a conformance requirement of 11801-2 that your cable meets out at 30129. There's something called Wiener testing that proves things. I quite like the term. We have something on our website to see how, if you want to know how to do it. 14763-3 is the testing of fibre optics. People like Ashley Martin, who head up that group, are doing a lot of work, and myself included, in developing new test methods. And we have done something a little bit unusual in Australia and New Zealand. We use a standard called 61935-1, which is a tester standard. We've withdrawn that, and now we're going to refer only to the IEC 61935-1. It's just that those, we weren't quite sure, we had no visibility when those standards were changing, so it's just easier not to be out of step with the rest of the world by just going and adopting the international standard. We don't have any tester manufacturers manufacturing in Australia, so it didn't really impact us at all. So modular plug terminated links, patch panel, either to an SCP or to a plug or straight in. SCP, service concentration point, it's another name for a CP, but it's the name for a CP in the Eliminator 1.6 series. You put a plug on the end of the cable, you terminate that, and in Australia, we have a test method for it. We've got a test method for it specified within Eliminator 1-1. Internationally, they're working on it. It'll be a couple of years before they get one that is a standard. Channel testing is not appropriate because the plugs on the end of the cable don't get tested on a channel. So the two plugs on the end of a channel don't form part of a channel, so they don't get tested if you do a channel test. These are normally associated with high dependency safety and security systems. So cameras and WAPs often have a high dependency, and we mean that we really need to make sure these things work. And poor connector choice may mean that you have a high point of failure. You need to go out and buy something that is rated by one of the vendors to meet the performance requirements. If you go down to your local wholesaler and pick up some plugs that will just grip on the end of it, there's a really high chance of failure. Poor terminations, high chance of failure. The links aren't tested. This is going to be the one that causes contractors the most risk as far as getting this wrong. They've been saying I've been doing it for years, it's never caused us a problem. Yes, that's true. But we strengthened the requirements in S009 to make it more your problem. And when it gets a failure now, it's not just that something won't work, it's the impact of something not working. So a camera and a freezer that's going to protect people in the forklift topples is really going to be on to you. The camera onto overlooking a car park in a hospital protecting nursing, if that fails, it's going to be a little bit on you as well. So remote powering. We're looking at around 500 milliamps per conductor. So 500 milliamp conductor, 1 amp per pair. That's basically where we are. So that's 4 amps in a cable, 2 amps one way, 2 amps the other way. Okay, so we've got 3 classifications. These are coming at the moment. RP1 really means it's the old PoE. Yeah, it's the first grade of PoE. You're not doing anything greater than 212. You can plug your hard container. So anything that you've got legacy installation, that would be a remote powered 1 classification. RP2 is where you say, well, not everything is going to be RP1. So it's somewhere between 212 and 500 milliamps on average. So you're going to have some at 500 milliamps, you're going to have some at 200 milliamps, and you say, well, the average of that's going to be, I do my calculations, the average of that's going to be 300. So I'm happy for this site to run at 300 milliamps in the cable bundle. So the amount of cables you have in the bundle that are activated, the average current on that will be 300. And you set that in your documentation to say that we can't have any more than 300. And our RP3 is saying, well, we don't know what we're going to run over it, so let's make everything 500 milliamps. And that way we don't need as many controls. You're going to need to come up with some controls on this. And what we're going to do is RP1, you can attach as much equipment as you want, as long as it's under 212 milliamps. And you just need to clean your cable to make sure you're not going to add anything in that you shouldn't. If you do RP3, which means you've specified a particular number, then yes, you're going to have to watch what you connect, because if you start connecting up something that is going to take the average beyond what you expect, then there's an issue. And again, we don't want to add more cable to the bundles, causing potentially more heat rise. And at 500 milliamps RP3, we don't care what you connect, just connect to your heart's content. But if you're going to do any more cabling, then you're really going to to watch what you're planning to make sure you don't exceed the bundle size or other considerations in your cabling. So RP1, RP2, and RP3, you'll find information about how to design those within 14763-2. So in Australia, that'll be ASNZS. Australia, New Zealand will be ASNZS 14763-2, and internationally it'll be ISO IEC 14763-2. And gentlemen, that's me, done. And I'm hoping you've been listening. Craig, you still there?
Thank you very much, Ben Murray. I'm still here, mate. Yeah.
I had a terrible thought there that I've been just talking to myself for the last hour.
Isn't it a horrible sensation where you have absolutely no idea whether people are able to actually see or hear what you're saying and doing? It's a weird sensation, isn't it?
Yes.
But I can guarantee that they were capable of seeing what you presented and what you were saying. So thank you very much for that again, Murray. Has anyone got any questions to finish off the session? I can see we've still got 59 people on the line. In the chat window or the questions window, I've just had a little look. No one's posed any at the moment. So you've either covered it off exceptionally well, Murray, or you've confused the bejesus out. Well, that's the third option. I didn't want to mention that, but that's always a possibility. Paul, are you still there as well? No, this is the test, and is Paul still about? He might have cut away. That's all right. Okay, look. Final offer. If no one's got any questions or anything they want to drop into the chat window, just to say hello to everybody. If not, I would just like to say thank you all on the line for your time today. Again, if you are a credential holder and you want the CEC for the session, please make sure to contact myself or the BICSI office. And if there are no other questions for today, I'd like to close the session. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye now.
Bye.